Okay, guys, welcome back to Let's Get Freaky podcast. Super excited for our next guest tonight. We are joined by Joe de Hoyos. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great. I appreciate the invite, and yeah, I can't wait for us to have a good conversation. We're already having one before we came on the air,
Yeah,
so
man. We didn't even need to record.
that's for sure.
Should have
Yeah,
hit record before. But
yeah,
you're based in Texas, is that correct?
yes, sir. In Houston, Texas.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah,
And you've got a paranormal, is it a group, Woodline Paranormal?
yeah. That's my paranormal group. It's called Woodline Paranormal. I formed a group this year in February, and yeah, we've done a couple of event investigations, and yeah, it's gone pretty well. Yeah,
Awesome,
we got a
man.
pretty good team. Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man. I always like to go to the start, where it all started for you, your experiences, what got you into these wild subjects.
It's from early childhood. I've always had a fascination and a love and a passion for this. I mean, I'm talking 5 or 6 years old, and I just always was attracted to this, to this stuff. And the late '70s, early '80s, we had a neighbor that lived across the street from us, and he actually worked with my dad, and he had all these stories about different cryptids and paranormal stuff and UFOs and aliens and just all kind of other strange stories. And so that kind of like really pushed me over the edge. And when I got old enough to cut grass, I start with that money. That's what I would do. I would go and buy books. Go to the bookstore. And at that time, every mall had a bookstore. And yeah, so that's what I did. I just bought books and would look at it in search of when it would come on, or even unsolved mysteries if they would have something on like that. I would watch those shows. And uh, even through middle school and high school, I was still like a closet paranormal guy. I didn't let a lot of people know what I was doing or what I was reading, but that's what I was doing. But, after high school, graduate, go to college, and I wind up getting married and having kids, and that kind of got put on the back burner. And then when the Bigfoot show started coming out, and there were like paranormal shows, but they weren't like investigative shows. They were kind of like more or less reporting on paranormal stuff, right? But that kind of like again pushed me over the edge, and that's when I started going out. Started looking for Bigfoot like in 2012. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was pretty
Awesome,
cool.
man. I
Yeah,
love it how you say in the closet with the paranormal.
yeah,
That's what it's like. There is a stigma with the paranormal that
mhm,
people that are not interested in it, that
right.
you get that funny look when you tell them that you look into these stuff and you've had
You know,
experiences yourself. You get that
you
look.
know, I don't know if it would have been like that because I was such in the closet, and when I finally, like I said, came out, that was like right around 2012, and that's like when I first got on Facebook. And I joined different groups, on Facebook, and I would post stuff here and there. So I didn't care what people thought, um, but I didn't broadcast it like I do now. But so far so good. Is I'm sure there are probably people and friends and family that think I'm crazy, but I've gotten all the feedback I've gotten has been positive, and people call me all the time, friends and family, like, hey, this happened to me, or this happened to a friend of mine, whatever, and kind of
Yeah,
get my input. So it's actually pretty cool. And I've
yeah.
got Bigfoot stickers on my truck, and I've had people stop me and say, hey, are you into this stuff? I'm like, yeah, I love it. And they'll tell me, hey, a friend of mine told me this, or I had this happen to me. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty
That's
cool.
awesome, man. So what sort of experiences did you have growing up?
Growing up, I had no experiences with anything paranormal. When I was 21, I was still living at home, and I was wild. I was a wild kid. I'm 53 years old now, but I was hell on wheels. I was one of those kids that the parents were like, eventually they didn't even give me a curfew anymore because they knew I wasn't going to obey it. They were just kind of like, just come home in one piece, come home safe. But so one night I was home and I was laying in bed and I was actually, not doing anything crazy. We had watched boxing was on and I went to sleep. And I don't know why I woke up, but I woke up and there was this guy standing in my room. And this was, I guess I was 21, so man, maybe early 90s. Yeah, it had to be 91, 92. And he was standing in front of my closet door, and He had on a long black trench coat and a black fedora type hat. And I saw him, and I'm laying down, and he walks over there, walks towards me. And when he does, he just stands over me. And when he leans over, I grab him by the fucking neck. And I don't know if I can cuss, but I grab him by the
Yeah.
neck. And it felt like this rubbery, foamy type of, that's what it felt like. And he was just leaning over me, and he was just staring at me, and I couldn't see him. I could only see like from his, like the top of his lip, like underneath his nose, on down to his chin, and it was really like dry, crackly, like bluish, blackish skin. And I was trying to call for my dad, and I couldn't call for my dad. And like I said, I was wild. So I had a pistol grip shotgun under my bed, and I don't know how I did it, but I rolled off and I picked it up and I grabbed it and I racked around and I turned around where he was at and he was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I haven't told very many people. If you go look at all the podcasts, this is like you're only maybe the second or third person I've ever
Oh
told this whole
man.
story. I've told
Thank
people
you.
I've seen them, but I've never told them like the whole story like I just did tell you right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was and so like I said, this was the early '90s, and the internet wasn't around. As a matter of fact, I didn't get a computer till like 2000, myself. And when I started this new job, and this was probably, man, right around maybe that time, 2001, 2002. I was, and again in about 2005, because I was still there at the same company. One of the guys came to work late, and he's like, we had to take the baby to the hospital last night in the middle of the night. And I'm like, and she was 5 years old at the time. She's like 25 now. She's a firefighter actually. But anyway, um, uh, he's like, yeah, we heard her screaming in the middle of the. Bloody murder. So they ran to her room, and she's laying on the floor, face down. Uh, and they had a toddler bed, and a toddler bed is maybe a foot off the ground, at the most. She's laying on the ground, face down. And when they pick her up, she's got blood coming out of her mouth. Her tooth is missing. One of her teeth, her front tooth is missing. But not only is it missing, but her top gum was shredded. Like the roots came out. And it was like the way he described it was like it got hit really hard that it bent it in. So the roots kind of did that number. I don't know if this is going to be on video. So, but
Mhm.
if anyone's watching, the roots kind of came out like that.
Yeah.
And then when they finally found her tooth, it was 10 feet away. So they wind up in the middle of the night taking her to the hospital. So I asked him, I said, what the hell happened to her? And he's like, the only thing we can think of is that this man with a black trench coat and a hat that we've been seeing in the house did this to her. And I was
Whoa.
like, what? And he told me, yeah, that they had just started renting this house out, as a matter of fact. And they were going to his father-in-law's house and they saw for rent sign. So they stopped and, uh, they wanted a house. They were living in an apartment at the time. And so they wanted to get a house. And they saw the rent for rent sign and then they pulled in and there were people working on the house only in the kitchen. And a lady came out and she's like, they started talking to her. She goes, yeah, this was my dad's house. He passed away. So we're doing some remodeling in the kitchen, and if you guys are interested, whatever. So they work out a deal. 2 weeks later, they're moving into this place. Um, as they're moving in, a neighbor from across the street comes over and he asks my friend, he goes, "Hey, you got Jack's place, huh?" He's like, I don't know who Jack is." He said, "Oh, Jack was the old man that lived here before you guys. He passed away in the kitchen. He was terminally ill of cancer, and he just got tired of it, and he put an end to it. We'll just say that in the kitchen, right?" So Richard got curious because he said that he just thought it was kind of weird that they were only working on the kitchen cabinets. That's what they were working on. And so he starts looking at the walls and he can find where they spackled over a hole in the wall inside the cabinet, you know.
Yeah.
So he starts telling his wife and he's flicking the lights on and off, and Jack's gonna get you, Jack's gonna get you. So he thinks, and still to this day, if I ask him, because we're still in contact, we talk all the time actually. Um, he still blames himself for that because he said after he did that, one day he was laying in bed, he was by home by himself, and he saw this man in the trench coat and the black hat walk by his bedroom door while he's watching TV. He goes, man, I grabbed my gun and I went through the whole house and there was nobody there, you know. And even his wife said that when she came home, she found him asleep on the couch with the gun, and But he also came home because after that house got so spooky and so crazy for them that he worked. We all work nights. We work together. So when he would come home at night, she would actually go to her dad's house and wait for him to get home, and then she'd say, "Hey, I'm home," and he'd come over. But he was sitting in the driveway one day and he was calling her, "Hey, I just pulled up in the driveway," and they had a big kitchen window. He goes, "I could see that guy walking through my living room." So he
Whoa.
called his brother-in-law to come over. They both went in the house with guns. They couldn't find him. Right. A couple of weeks later, they're having dinner uh, at his father-in-law's house, and he starts telling his father-in-law about all the stuff that's been happening in the house and about the guy that he has seen twice. His father-in-law goes, I saw that guy standing outside your house one day when I was walking the dog. He was standing out on the sidewalk, looking straight at your house. He goes,
Man.
and his dog was a really good dog. He was a boxer, and he was real, gentle, real well mannered dog. He said he went ballistic when he saw that guy. And they tried to follow him down the street. And when he turned the corner, when they got to the corner and they looked where the guy went, he said the guy was gone. They didn't. He said, "Because I don't know how he got away, but he got away."
Man.
Yeah. So
Dogs know, man. Dogs know as well.
yeah. So after that, I started doing research, and then I found out that there's the Hatman, entity,
Hmm.
and yeah. So and then when I found that out, I was like, "Holy cow!"
So, do you think that was the same entity that you encountered?
If it's I don't know if there's multiple Hatman entities, a bunch
Hmm.
of them running around. So I think that if it's the exact same one, I don't know. But I think Hatman is, just like anything else, and just like you have hundreds of angels and
Hmm.
thousands of spirits, you probably have hundreds of Hatmen. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, so
If it's
many
just
people have seen them. There's
all
so
over the
many
world,
accounts.
all over the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
It makes you think if this is just a theory, that it's just a theory, it might not be anything to this, but it makes you think that possibly that we perceive it as a hat, but it could be something else. Do you know?
This looked like a hat to me, man. This
Yeah.
this I got an up close and personal look at it. It looked like a
Hmm.
hat, and
Was
I
it
and
like
I was
a shadow figure, or was it like could you see features on it and stuff like that?
like I said, I could see like from the like right above the top lip on down,
Hmm.
and he had this old man look about him. Just from what I could see, the lips were really like thin, and you know how people when they smoke, especially like with older people, they get those little lines, right?
Hmm.
From smoking, all their life. That's what he kind of had. Even his chin, he had like little. And they weren't even wrinkles. They were almost like cracks when I think about it. Yeah, they were almost like cracks, and it was real um, ashy looking. That's like he never put a drop of lotion on ever.
Yeah,
Or
man.
and like I said, and his throat felt like some kind of foamy rubber. And dude, I was squeezing with all my might. And I was
Yeah.
and so I didn't actually have him by the throat. I had him by what I guess the trachea area, and that's what I was trying to do, like get the hell away from him.
Wow.
Yeah,
And you could
and
feel that as solid as anything.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, that was and he was solid. I mean, um, you know, when I think about it, yeah, I remember his jacket. I remember his hat, where his long coat. I remember the way he moved towards me. I could tell he was walking, but it was smooth. It was almost like it was a floating kind of a movement, but I could just tell he wasn't floating. He was moving. And that
wow.
was and so in that same bedroom. Okay, I wind up getting married, move out. Uh, I don't know. Several years later, my niece gets married. Her and her new husband move in with my mom. They're sleeping in this bedroom, and he sees this thing too, and it scared the heck out of him. Also, yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
it's her ex-husband now, but yeah, yeah, it scared him really, really bad. My brother is a pastor, so he wound up blessing the whole house. Um, Years later, my sister, she had got married to my now brother-in-law. They of course moved in to my mom's house. It's funny, we've all lived with my mom at one time or another, but yeah, so she moved in and she wound up having two kids, and they stayed there for a while. But my youngest nephew, uh, when he was like 4 or 5 years old, he was screaming bloody murder that the man, and that's all he would say. And he was under the bed. My sister had to call my brother-in-law, hey, you need to come get him because he won't come out from underneath the bed. So he had to come home from work to coax him out because he wasn't. He doesn't really remember that. He knows he still remembers because he's 18, 19 years old now. He doesn't really remember too much, but he just says he remembers seeing a man and
Wow.
it scared him. So I wonder what he saw at that age. You know?
Interesting, man.
Yeah, yeah.
How far was that from your friend's house as well that had the same sort of entity?
It's quite a few miles, maybe 10, 15 miles. And I don't know, geographically speaking, it's probably not a big distance, but
Mm.
Houston's a big city and talking about different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting though, man.
yeah,
It's interesting how you've experienced the same kind of thing, and
yeah,
it's been physical. Like you
yeah,
physically felt it.
yeah,
They've obviously been hurt by it.
yeah.
Man, that's wild.
And it's funny how three of us have had, well, two for sure. I don't know what my nephew seen, but I've got a sneaky suspicion that's what happened to him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And why
man.
just us seeing it, I don't know. But you know what? I'd be curious to find out if any little kids have ever seen it. I don't know if any little kids have ever seen it.
Hmm. Well, I've talked to people that have seen the Hatman when they were kids. You know,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
A
Hmm.
few people. This is it's a quite a common thing,
Okay.
which is interesting. Why do
Yeah.
so many of us see this entity?
Yeah.
It's normally like described as like a shadow, and you just sort of see the shadow of the hat.
Yeah.
I've
Right.
never heard of someone actually physically grabbing it. I mean, that's
What I yeah. So
pretty
my
ballsy,
buddy,
man.
yeah, when my buddy saw him and I asked him what he looked like, he said he was as real as any other person, you
Hmm.
know, that he had ever seen.
Yeah,
Um, it'd be interesting to see what details my niece's ex-husband had, but we don't keep in contact with him anymore. So,
I
yeah.
did. I did take a swing at a shadow figure once when I was
Oh, did you?
funny enough, when I
Oh,
was 21 as well.
okay.
I woke up during the night and I saw the shape of a man standing over my bed, and I thought it was my little brother.
Oh,
And I tried to punch him because he scared me, obviously.
yeah.
And I've sort of gone through whatever this thing was and woke up, and it wasn't my brother.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, we both
You know,
attacked an entity.
yeah. So, what kind of funny too was, years later, this is probably a good, man, 10 years, maybe 12 years. So when I was married, we moved into a house, and the house had belonged to only one owner, which, we knew the people. Uh, and their kids came to us and were like, hey, if you guys want to buy the house, we'll sell it to you guys. And that house had been empty for 5 years because the people that lived there, they died like, man, they were like in their late 90s, like 97, 98 years old when they died. And they were the only people that ever had that house. So, and they had all their furniture there. Typical old people, they took care of everything. Everything was immaculate in that house. And so we were like, yeah. And they were like, you can keep the furniture, whatever. Shit, everything was in spectacular condition. And we're like, we ain't got to bring anything. We'll keep the other house over there and we'll move it over here. And it wasn't a far drive from that either house. So we move in. Um, from I was there maybe 2 or 3 days, and I'm laying in bed, and I could feel my bed go down. And at that time, I had a boxer, and his name was Atlas, and he was 75-pound dog. And I thought it was him, and he knew he wasn't allowed on the furniture. So I sat up, and I was gonna be like, "Get your ass off the bed." There was nobody there, and I was like, "Okay, that's kind of strange." And I don't know, maybe a week later, I felt the bed go down again, and again, first thing I thought, Atlas is getting on the bed. So I sat up, nobody was there. I get up, I go to the kitchen, and I'm like, "Hey, this house is haunted." And I got 3 kids, and my ex were like, "Yeah, it is. It is." Just all of them were in agreement. They had because within that time they had all experienced something.
Mhm.
Um, and one night I woke up, and there was a lady standing next to my bed, and just a black figure, no kind of details, but I could tell it was a woman, had a woman shape, but I could tell she was wearing a dress, and the dress kind of came out like that typical old dress. Um, and she moved towards me, and I threw a kick at her, you know, and I said, "Get back, mother," and that's what I said.
Yeah.
And it's funny. You threw a punch, I threw a kick.
Yeah, man.
I
We
think I'm
got
the first person to do karate on a ghost, but uh, she disappeared. But I don't think she was trying to scare me intentionally.
Mhm.
I think she was there just letting us know she was there, and that that was still her house, and she was probably wondering what's this guy doing sleeping in my bed, and
Yeah, yeah.
um, you know,
It's
we
when you're sleeping and you wake up and there's something there,
yeah,
even if it's one of the kids or your wife or whoever, it's
mhm,
scary.
right,
It's
yeah,
the shock of seeing something when you just wake up, but then
yeah,
when you see like the shadow, whatever it is that you see, it's scary, man. It is very
yeah,
scary.
yeah, and so yeah, and we had all seen some kind of figure in that house. My oldest daughter, she saw a figure go from one corner of her room to the other corner of her room one night. Uh, my son, he went to the Marines after high school, so after he graduated, he's at home for a couple of weeks waiting on his leave date. And he told me he was sitting on the couch. He had his arm on the arm of the couch, and he saw some movement out of his right peripheral. So when he turned to look, he said there was a gray, smoky figure, and it was standing up, but then it squatted down like to get to his level. He said it squat down and it held out its finger like that, and it touched him on the arm. He said when it touched him on his arm, all his hair on his arm stood up, but he goes, then it disappeared.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's funny because at the time when it happens, it is kind of scary and unnerving. But I mean, we got over all this stuff, I mean, almost instantly because we knew that this wasn't a demon spirit or some kind of, evil spirit or something that had ill intent. It's
Mhm.
definitely scary. Twice I saw that that same gray smoky figure, and it wasn't smoky like, but it was just that color gray. But it was a person walking across my living room and one time walking across the kitchen. You know, and I mean, I saw that twice with my own eyes.
Yeah.
Like I said, that one night my daughter got to see that figure go from her corner, but she said this time it was just like a black circle or black blob, and it moved from
Mhm.
one corner to the other corner, and that's what she came and got me. She's like, "Dad, I just saw this thing," and it like I said, it scared her, it unnerved her. We talked about it, and she went right back into that room and went to sleep.
Wow.
So yeah, and then
Braver than me.
yeah, and it was funny because we at that time I was doing my Bigfoot stuff. So I told my son, I said, "Hey, go to the closet and get my digital recorder, and we're gonna do an EVP session." I had never done an EVP session, and it was me, my oldest daughter, and my youngest son. We're there talking, and I see Jacob coming out of the room, and he's coming out. He is white as a ghost, and he's holding the recorder up like this. He goes, Dad, you gotta hear this. You gotta hear this." And I'm like, "What'd you do?" He goes, "I went in there," and I'm like, "No one told you to do that, you know." So he plays it, and you can hear him say, "Is there anybody here with us?" And you hear a voice go, "Yeah," just like that, just like that. And I mean, I got it to you. I'll send it to you. You can use it for this show
Yeah.
or if you want to or not. But
No, thank you, man.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. My ex one time, this was towards the end of our marriage. We were already kind of, being done with each other. But the Texans were playing in California. I think they were playing San Diego. So it was a late game for us, 2 hours behind. So by the time the game was over, it was almost midnight, and they did really well that night. They won, so I wanted to watch the highlights. Like I hadn't just seen the game,
I
and
do that, man.
yeah, yeah. So uh, I'm watching the highlights. By the time I go to bed, it's probably closer to 1 o'clock now. So um, I go into the room, and when I go in there, she's sitting on the bed, and she's got the blanket over her head like that. And she had went there because we had to fight. She was like, "I'm going to bed." Okay, go to bed. I'm gonna watch football, right? Um, I'm like, "What are you doing?" She's like, she looks up at me because I'm freaking out. And I said, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, I came here and I'm laying down and we had to fight. I'm thinking about my parents. Her parents at the time they had an illness, both of them." And she goes, "I felt somebody climb in the bed, lay down next to me, put their arm around me." And she goes, "And I heard them say, 'Everything's gonna be okay, Mija.'" Mija, for people who don't know, that's like saying daughter or little girl or baby girl. It's a term of endearment, really.
Mhm.
But she heard a voice out loud, an audible voice say, "Everything's
Wow.
gonna be okay."
Did she recognize the voice?
She said at that time she thought it was my dad. And
Wow.
there was a couple of times that the kids had said, I think, Grandpa was here. I think Grandpa was here. And shortly
Mm.
after that, of course, we wind up, splitting up and whatever. And we're on good terms now, really. But after that happened, I actually left Houston for a couple of years, and I was kind of going through a rough time. And my dad was around. I can't really explain it, but I just know it was him, that he was around. And one day, my youngest was, he was living with me, so we had a townhouse, and I was upstairs, and I heard him go in the garage. So I figured he's washing clothes, and I'm like, "Hey, are you washing some clothes?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I had a few items I wanted him to wash." I said, "Wash this for me." And I leaned over the side and I threw him down. I was upstairs. I threw him down. I said, "Here, wash this for me." Well, right next to me, there's a light switch. When you come up to the stairs, there's a light switch, and it turned on the light in the hall. Um, when I threw it down, I heard it go click, and the light came on. Right, and I don't know why, but I just knew that was my dad, and I just, said, "Okay, Dad, I know you're here." I lived there in San Antonio for a couple of years, and I would always feel when he was around. Came back to Houston, moved in with my mom for a little bit, um, and I was in the kitchen, and we have a bar that separates the kitchen from the living room. She's leaning on the bar, and I was telling her this exact story. And when I told her, and the light switch flicked on, the light switch in the kitchen flicked on, and the light came on. And this
Oh
time I had
wow.
somebody there with me, my mom. So yeah, it's something we talk
That's
about all the
cool.
time because we both witnessed it. And I told her, I said, I think it was just Dad. You know,
That's cool, man.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
My dad, he's made his presence known to all the other family members. I got a couple of well, at least one cool story. A couple of years ago, my mom had a birthday, and we had a party for her at her house. And so my dad, he passed away in 2012, but he had a twin brother. My uncle is, he's still here. He's still alive, and he's doing really well. And so he came and with my aunt, and they've been married 50 years. So my aunt's my aunt. She's my aunt. Uh, Love her to death. And of course, my uncle came, my aunt came. It was me, my brother, my sister, our kids, and our grandkids, and mom, the great grandmother. And so it was a nice little crowd there at the house. And we had a mariachi band come and play for her, And after the party, my brother was telling me that they were supposed to go to the cemetery that Monday to go see my dad. And I was like, okay, well, let me know how everything goes, whatever. So I knew it had rained Monday. So Tuesday, I called my brother. I'm like, hey, did you guys wind up going to the cemetery? He goes, no, because back where Dad's at, it gets really muddy back there. So we're just going to reschedule it because my dad, my uncle, my aunt, my niece were all going to go. I was like, okay. He says, well, I got something crazy to tell you what happened to my youngest niece. She came up to me at the party. This is my brother talking. She came up to me at the party and she goes, hey, I keep hearing Grandpa's voice. And he's telling me that he's glad Grandma has the party, that he's proud of us for throwing it, and that she deserves it. I said, well, that's cool. And we all think she has some gifts and abilities. And I was like, well, that's cool. I didn't think too much of it. He goes, but when I called Uncle James and say, hey, let's reschedule because, it's raining and it gets muddy back there. He's like, okay, we'll go some other time. He says, hey, something happened to your Aunt Patty at the party. She heard your dad's voice. And my brother's like, really? And he goes, yeah. He heard your dad say that he was glad your grandma had the party, that she deserves it, and that when her time comes, that he'll be there for her. Basically, the same message. Now, at this time, my aunt and my youngest niece had no idea the other one had heard this.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
That's
basically the
awesome,
same.
man.
Yeah. Other than when the time comes, I'll be there. You know,
Yeah.
maybe he didn't want to tell my the youngest niece because she was only 15 at the time. Maybe he didn't want to say that to her to kind of
Yeah.
scare her or freak her out.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, you know. So
Yeah, man, that's cool.
mhm,
Going back to what you were saying, that feeling when you were saying that you know your dad's there as well.
mhm.
I really think that there's something to
Yeah,
that just the knowing that you have.
yeah.
And
I just knew he was around. There was a weird kind of uh feeling of love. There really
Mhm.
was. I'll get too emotional when I start talking about that. But with that being said, um, he hasn't been around me the last couple of years, and I think because he knows. okay, he's doing good, he's on the right track. I don't need to be around him, and I'm
Yeah,
fine with that. You know, um, I don't think he's like, screw this kid, I'm not going to hang around him anymore. I think he's whatever he wanted to do to guide me or just to kind of watch over me, he did, and he's like, okay, I can leave him alone, and so that's what yeah.
that's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
So that from going to that from that first experience when you were 21 and you saw this entity in your room, which is quite a big experience to have. Would you say that sort of opened you up and that's why you've gone on to see quite a few things?
Yeah, I don't know if it opened me up because I always believed in it, and I don't
Hmm.
know if that was an event that opened me up in a sense of gave me any kind of gifts or abilities because I don't claim to have that. Um, there's only one thing that I've always thought about is I could always smell stuff, whether it be flowers, tobacco, perfume, stuff like that. Even like someone baking, I could always smell stuff like that. Um, and that was from the time I was a little kid. Um, but so I don't really know if that event opened me up to anything or any kind of gift started to develop, because I even now I do kind of explore it and try to play with it, but I I don't really know if that really helps. Like I meditate a lot now and stuff like that, and like when I came back here to Houston, like if you had told me that I would be have crystals or have tarot cards or oracle cards before that, I would have told you were crazy. Now I've got oracle cards, I've got crystals, and I got a
Yeah.
pendulum, man, I've got sage, I've got holy water, I've got
Yeah.
moon water over here, I'm telling you, 5 years ago, you had told me that, I would have been like, dude, you're crazy. There's nothing to that. So,
So do you think your this is your paranormal side, spirituality side, that's something that's growing and growing and growing?
yeah, yeah. That for sure. Because I use that almost
Mhm.
daily. Yeah. And I've got about 30 jars of herbs, different herbs and stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, dude, I'm telling you, man, people, I laughed at people like that. I used to seriously laugh at people or scoff at it,
Yeah.
these fools are crazy. Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot to it, man. That is for
hmm
sure.
yeah, I think so, man.
Going back
Yeah.
to the first entity you saw, difficult question. I know we've called it the Hatman, but what do you think that was? And I know it's a hard question because
I don't know if it was just somebody saying, "Hey, get your stuff together," Um, I don't really know, but that's kind of the impression that I get, you know,
hmm
because like I said, I was wild as hell, and after that, it did kind of calm me down a little bit. It wasn't necessarily like a conscious thought, like, okay, you better calm down, otherwise the boogeyman will come back. It was just something that I kind of went through and just kind of calmed down on my own, and started doing the right things and stuff. Yeah,
interesting, man.
yeah,
Interesting. So it was possibly like I don't know, like a message, possibly.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think that's a pretty good way to put it. I've kind of thought about that too, like it was a message, sending me a message basically, like there's kind of the same way, someone owes you some money, you're gonna go send somebody to go and break their thumbs,
Yeah.
send them a message, kind of like that. Yeah.
There's a lot more to this world, man. That's it.
Yes, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I
Wow.
say. That's what I tell people all the time.
Yeah. We spoke before we started recording. You said you've seen two UFOs, I believe. I think that's what you
Yeah,
said. Can we get into that?
yeah. So, the first time I saw a UFO, I was fishing in Galveston with my ex-father-in-law, and we were standing on the jetties, and he was, I don't know, maybe 40, 50, maybe even 60 feet down to my right, um, and so we're sitting there, and man, it's a nice, beautiful, clear night. The water's still, and I'm just enjoying the night. And that was one of my passions too at that time was fishing. I loved it. And I'm just sitting there holding the rod, looking out at the waves, and all of a sudden I hear him go, "Hey, Joe!" And I look down towards him, and he's like, "What's that?" And he points up to my left. So when I look up to my left, I didn't have to look for it. I didn't have to search the sky for it. There was a disc, a round disc, and we could only see the bottom of it because it was almost directly in line above us. and it was a clear night. I mean, it was actually a full moon night, bunch of stars in that sky that night. And this thing was maybe 200 feet above our head. And like I tell everyone, I think a professional baseball player probably could have hit it with a baseball, you know. Um, and we saw the bottom of it only. Um, and it was moving so slow. I mean, not a wobble. You know, most aircraft they have to maintain an airspeed to stay in the air, unless it's a helicopter. And this thing had no propellers on it, no wings, no kind of thrust that we could see. You know, certainly no kind of smoke or steam or flames or any of that stuff. It didn't have lights on it, um, and it made no sound at all either. And it was so smooth. I mean, we watched this thing go all the way down the coast until it disappeared. And down a ways from us, maybe 2 or 3 miles, there's a an airstrip for like the single engine planes, small aircraft, and you could hear them things coming in and buzzing. And this thing was right above us, not a noise, not a sound.
Wow.
Yeah, and when we got a really good look at it, and yeah, that was just it was just strange. It was the round disc, you know,
How big would you say it was if you had
maybe
to?
the size of a regular small airplane. Also, it wasn't like it was anything huge. It was just like a regular size small single plane airplane. I don't know what the dimensions of that is, but very, the diameter was, relative to, to that. Yeah,
Wow, man.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
How long would you say you got to look at that for, roughly?
I bet 5 minutes, every bit of 5 minutes, because it was
Yeah.
super slow. It wasn't flying around. It wasn't jetting or taking off. Very smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool, man. That's a cool experience.
yeah, yeah. And then the second time, I was out doing my Bigfoot stuff, and I had parked my truck at my friend's house because he uh, doesn't live very far from the Sam Houston Forest, is where I go do all my research. And so I parked at his house, and we drove on from there, and then we came back home, and we're standing outside. We're kind of just shooting the breeze and saying our goodbyes, and we're walking out to my truck, and I happened just to look up, and I seen these two lights coming at each other like this, and I'm like, these things are going to hit, you know. And they when they got so close, they stopped and they did like I don't know 2 or 3 loops, and then they took off again. Yeah, whatever it was pretty damn high. So I don't think there were drones, because I don't think drones. I mean, this is like airplane high, and there were pretty good sized lights, orbs, or whatever you want to call it, because they were definitely round. Um, and like I said, they came straight towards each other, and I mean, they stopped perfectly, and then just made a couple of little loops, and then just took off.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when I was checking that out, I mean, checking it out, doing some research on that, I actually had friends like in Canada who had told me they had seen similar stuff. So I was kind of like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Interesting, man. Do you think they were like entities in the sky, like interacting with each other?
They were definitely interacting with each other, because if they weren't, they would have hit each other, you
Yeah.
know. But I mean, they made a perfect freaking circle. Like I said, they went around 2 or 3 times, and it was a perfect in unison with each other, and then they just took off.
Wow, man. And a difficult question because it's hard to tell in the sky, but how big do you think they were?
Um, Again, maybe like a regular passenger size airplane,
Hmm.
that's what they look like to me, and um, um, that's just the size that they look. And I could tell they were way up there in the atmosphere, but
Hmm.
like I said, regular plane, altitude, or
Interesting,
whatever
man.
that was, 35,000 feet or whatever. You can see an airplane, especially at night with the lights.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this thing was, yeah, they were up there
Yeah,
for
man.
sure.
And we know planes don't do that and stop
Yeah,
and spin and
yeah,
yeah,
they're not going to fly that close to each other anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the UFO? What do you think of the UFO? What's your theories on the UFOs? What do you think is going on?
I think there's a lot of them are of this universe, but I do think that there are probably interdimensional beings also, and or other universes, other planes, other dimensions, whatever people want to call it. I think there are those entities and those beings that don't belong to this universe, this reality,
Hmm.
and they're able to, you know, just jump into ours and jump back.
Hmm.
That's what I think. And I think there's a mixture of both.
Yeah,
Um, you know, so yeah, I certainly believe that there's life in this universe, and we're not the only ones. And I have a feeling that there are those probably out there with technology, millions of years probably in advance than ours. So
yeah,
somebody
man.
just got a head start on us. Yeah,
I've seen things in the sky that I can't explain.
yeah,
UFOs. I've had a few different experiences. I
mm,
tell a lot of people if you look up and you constantly make a thing of looking out there, you're going to see something weird that you can't explain. There's
right.
there's there's so much going on up there, man.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think people, if they looked up a little bit more, they would probably, you know.
100%. You're going to
But
see some stuff.
everybody, especially nowadays, everybody's got their head down, and they're in their own little world. They're looking at their phone, and
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
no one's looking up anymore.
yeah,
Yeah. I do. I'm constantly looking up. I'm
yeah, man.
constantly looking up. You know.
Well, I think when we're interested in it, so we're looking for it.
Yeah.
And when you're looking for it, I think you do see it. Some like,
Yeah.
especially with the UFO, whatever's going on, like
Hmm.
it's very rare to meet someone that's not seen some weird light in the sky that they can't explain. You
Yeah.
know, there
Yeah.
could be like a logical explanation sometimes, but
Mhm.
I've seen things that I can't explain.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it, man.
Yeah. Oh, I love it too, man. I can talk about this thing all night.
Yeah. Now I've got to get into Bigfoot with you. I know you're a Bigfoot researcher as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
have you had any experiences with Bigfoot?
Um, I, I can't say for sure, right? And so one day when I like first started doing this stuff, I was um I was out and we're walking through the trail, and the person I was with goes, "Hey, look, there's something on here by that tree," and she points out, and I look up, and I'm like, I start looking towards where she was pointing, and I saw this red flash of fur, and when I saw the flash of fur, I was like, "Yeah, there it goes right there," and she goes, "No, it's not there. It's over here where I saw it." She points over here. So my brother-in-law and my sister were with me, and I was like, "Hey, let's go check it out." For my brother-in-law, so we walk over there, and the brush is high, it's really tall, and we look around the trees where I saw it, and then where she saw it, came back. I'm like, well, we didn't see anything, and she goes, well, whatever it was way taller than you, Patrick, because I'm 5'8", and she goes, the brush was taller than you. She goes, there's times where I couldn't even see you. She goes, but this thing was way above the brush. She even did her hand. She goes, like if you and Patrick are right here, this thing was up here. Kind of made this big, you know, kind of comparison. And then she goes, it was gray. I was like, okay. So, I didn't really push her on that. And then when a couple days later, I asked her about it again, and she was like, yeah, it looked gray. She goes, it almost looked like gray seaweed, kind of a look to it. And that she said, I said, well, what made you look over there? And she said, I heard like a branch snap or pop or something. And she goes, so I started scanning the wood line, and she goes, I got to that tree, and she goes, I saw it duck behind the tree like that, that it moved behind the tree. She goes, if it hadn't moved, I would have known it was there. And okay, so as even recently, within the last 4 or 5 years, I was asking people about the Sam Houston, and when I started making friends at that time, we found out that there was a big gray one that had been seen in that exact area. Yeah, a big gray one had been seen, and I even had a lady on my team on my show, and she was telling me that when she was backing up her truck at the trailhead, she saw a gray one standing behind her truck. And I was like, "Where were you at?" And in the back of my head, I already knew that where she was at, and she told me that's the trailhead going into there, into that area. So
Oh,
yeah, and there's been a couple of guys that I know personally that have seen a big gray one in that area. So yeah,
interesting, man.
yeah.
How often are you out looking for the big guy?
I used to go, man, once a month, twice a month. But these last couple of years, this is probably the third year actually. In the summertime, I stay out of the woods, man. This heat just beats me down now. But yeah, I try to get out there when the weather's good, once, like I said, once a month, twice a month if I can. Um, I have found prints out there also. I found a 3-inch print one time in one of the creeks, and you're talking off trail. in the Sam Houston forest during snake season. I mean, who would let their little baby walk around the creek barefooted, right? Um, this was like in 2015, and then in 2019, in that same creek, but maybe I don't know, a couple hundred yards in the opposite direction, again off trail, I found it in an 8-inch print, and it was, it was a footprint in the creek. And again, this is, as a matter of fact, when I found that creek, I knew to be careful because the snakes had just started coming out at that time, from hibernation. And but they come out, man, they're mean as hell. They're hungry. They're looking for food.
Hmm.
And you're kind of known, don't be messing with the snakes at that point.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, uh, that was the weird. It was 8-inch print, and I know that because I put a little 20-ounce Gatorade bottle next to it when I took the picture.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then
Man.
so in that whole area where I actually go, there's actually been quite a few sightings going on in that whole area. And talking about that 3-inch print, it's off of a lake called Stubblefield Lake. So there's like a little arm or that kind of cuts to the forest. It's so here in the south we call it a slough. It's like a little arm. So on the other side of this arm, it's I don't know, maybe a quarter mile. I was telling my friend about this 3-inch print. He goes, "Dude, where did you find that print?" And I told him where I found it. He goes, "Well, I found my print here, and I mean, you're talking a quarter mile apart." He also found a 3-inch print. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Possibly a baby Sasquatch.
yeah, yeah. Baby Sasquatch. Yeah. I mean, like I
Man.
said, who would let their kids walk? And when he found his print and I found mine, it was 2 weeks apart. Yeah, I thought that was
Interesting.
pretty. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Have you heard anything while out investigating?
Yeah, we've heard, man, we've heard whoops, screams, hollers. We've wood knocks. Yeah, I've got some wood knocks recorded. It was funny because this past week I was talking to a friend of mine that's on my paranormal team. He's from Tennessee originally. He started telling me about one of his sightings that he possibly had. When I played him the wood knocks, man, he got chills. He goes, dude, he goes, because they used to live in Tennessee. They used to go up in the Appalachian. That's kind of the area he lived at, out in the middle of nowhere. He goes, dude, we used to hear this all the time. Because I never knew what it
Wow.
was. Yeah. 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 I've got some wood knocks. I've got a friend of mine named Kimbo. He recorded an owl. And then right after that owl, you hear this big boo, boo, boo. Just like that. It's crazy. And it sounds like a 400-pound owl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man.
that's a pretty, I've had a rock thrown at me, had a stick thrown at me. Yeah, I've seen eye shine twice, bright red, orange eye shine one time. The other time I saw it, it was more like a bluish white eye shine, and this thing was walking through the woods. Um, and then one time I saw a silhouette kind of doing this, number. It was standing on the edge of the
Ah,
wood line. It
behind the
was at night.
tree.
No, it was in front of the trees, in front of the trees, but it was dark. And as a matter it's something me and Walter talk about all the time. It's like, man, every time we come out of the full moon. We don't even plan it like that. But it was a full moon, but the moon was behind the trees. And um, so the front bottom part was dark. You can kind of see the light as you get closer to the top. At that bottom part, it gets a lot darker. And I was looking over there and I'm trying to think, are my eyes messing with me? Because your eyes will mess with you at night with the shadows. They'll kind of move around. And kind of like when you're looking up at the stars for too long, the stars will start doing this stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I kept looking away, and I would look back, and I would see it still swaying side to side. And yeah, so that was one of the weirdest things I
Man.
had ever seen. Yeah,
How big
and
would
I
you
didn't
say
want to.
that was? I know that's difficult as well.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe 6 feet, footage. But it kind of reminds me of this time. Uh, I'm having all these memories coming back to me. One of the first investigations I did, it was me, my buddy Shane, and a friend of mine named Armando. He passed away, but Armando parked his truck kind of on the side of this little dirt road, and me and Shane and Armando were sitting there, and we hear this loud bang on Armando's truck. It was a bang, and we all kind of looked at each other, and we stood up, and we went to his truck to go look around. There was nothing there. There was nothing in the bed of his truck, nothing on top of his truck. We couldn't see anything around his truck, like it had fallen on top of his truck at all. But even at that, we were all like, it sounded like it got hit from the side, like there was a slap on the side of his truck. It didn't sound like something hit the top of his truck or anything or fell in the bed. It sounded like a slap. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. That was one of the
Man.
crazy things that happened too.
Where do you stand on the Sasquatch? Because obviously you've got the woo camp, you've got the flesh
Yeah.
and blood, you've got the in the middle, which is where I like to put myself.
Mhm.
Play it safe.
I'm
What do you
I've
think?
got I've got both feet in the flesh and blood, and I
Okay.
base that on everyone that I've talked to, personally talked to. And I understand that people run into these things and they'll tell you that they've seen them turn into orbs, they've seen them jump through portals, they've seen them cloak, they've seen them get out of UFOs, they've seen them turn into boulders, turn into trees. Um, I just don't know if I believe all that. I think there's probably other things out there, just like we're talking about the ETs, or extraterrestrial beings or terrestrial beings also, right? Terrestrial to this universe. Um, but I think there's kind of the same thing that goes on because I just don't see why a creature would need to do one of those things or even all of those things to exist, and why would they exist on this planet, on this plane? They can jump through portals and go anywhere. Why? What the hell are you doing on this dirty planet?
Mhm.
Everything's polluted. Our rivers are polluted. Our lakes are polluted. You know, um, there's just so much disease even within the animals. Plenty of people have seen these things run after deer, chase deer down, chase elk down, chase moose down. If you can portal jump, why not portal jump right next to this animal and break its neck? You know,
True.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, that's or if you can cloak, why not cloak and wait for a deer to come next to you?
Hmm.
So so I think that there are probably other entities out there, and that's what people are probably seeing.
Hmm.
And again, that's just my opinion. Uh, People don't like it when I say that, but I think that you can't just close your mind off and say Bigfoot is only this. You
Hmm.
know, I
Yeah.
think Bigfoot itself is a flesh and blood creature, but I think there are also maybe other entities,
Yeah.
that do other things.
For sure, man. I
Yeah.
don't think there's anyone out there that's got all the answers. That is
Right.
for
Yeah.
sure. We're all
Yeah.
learning. Like my opinion changes every day.
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
speak to I'll speak to someone else and I'll be like, yeah, they're interdimensional, and I've
Yeah.
changed my opinion completely. But no,
Yeah.
it's interesting, man.
Yeah.
I think
And
like
then
yourself, there could be a mixture of both. Like
yeah,
and they might not be the same thing, but they,
you know,
you know.
and I've heard so many aggressive encounters, and these things not wanting people around, and because you also have the group that says, well, these things are protectors of the forest and they're the friendly forest people. There are plenty of on record accounts of people being physically attacked by being chased out of the woods, not paced out or walked out, chased out,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and then there are people that only focus on the fact that some Native Americans say, well, they're friendly and we traded with them and all this stuff. There are plenty of Native Americans that call these things by any kind of devil, in the name of a devil or cannibal or evil god. So, you can't discount those either.
Hmm. Yeah, it's probably like people. You probably get your good and your bad.
Well,
Like you,
it's like with any animal.
yeah.
You get, I mean, people think dolphins are the friendly creatures of the sea. Are pretty mean sometimes. They do
Hmm.
attack people.
Yeah.
People think raccoons are these cute little creatures, and the raccoons are mean as hell, man. Don't mess with a raccoon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the thing is, if you get attacked by a Bigfoot dogman,
yeah,
you're probably not going to live to tell the tale,
yes,
and that
yeah.
and that's probably where some of the missing 411 comes in, stuff like that,
Oh
where
yeah, I
where
think so
people
for
just
sure.
vanish off the face of the earth and
Yeah.
there's no
You,
trace.
you know, twice since I've been doing this, I've come across two tents that nobody was at, but all their stuff was there. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I used to have, I don't even know if I have a picture of that tent that me and my buddy Armando came up upon. The tables were there, the ice chests were there, chairs were there, and it was all covered like, like when all that green stuff, like especially like in the spring starts falling on top of stuff. And
Hmm.
this stuff had been there for a while because everything was covered with all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. Another buddy of mine, he was at one of the camps, and in the middle of the night, he saw this car going down the road, dragging a tent behind it. Like he just threw it half-assed in the trunk of his car, and
Yeah,
uh, yeah, he was dragging his tent, taking off.
that's wild, man. Did you
Yeah,
report that camp that was?
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We reported both camps, and as a matter of fact, the second one that we reported was there for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Did they
We've been
manage to
walk.
find the?
I don't know. They never told us anything about it, but I don't know how much they actually investigated on it.
Mhm.
Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they knew and they're like, well, there's nothing we can do about it now.
Yeah.
Um, you know, because sometimes at some of these campgrounds, people who are homeless live over here, and to me, they're easy prey.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Because you do hear as well. I don't know if like there's obviously reports of Bigfoot and stuff like that being aggressive all around the US and around the world, but there's something about the Texas Bigfoot. You hear quite a lot of aggressive attacks and quite a lot of aggression seems to come from the
aggressive
Texas.
behavior, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of aggressive behavior. Yeah, yeah, and I've actually heard quite a few from other states also.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's necessarily a Texas thing, but I think it's definitely a Southern thing. Because I've talked to friends in Mississippi, who have had some very aggressive encounters. I talked to a guy in Louisiana. They were out in the swamps on their fishing boat, and they got attacked by something. They didn't even hear them coming, and they were told that they were attacked by bears. And there's no swamps in the bears there's no bears in the swamps of Louisiana, you know.
Yeah.
And if a bear's going to walk through the swamp, you're going to hear them coming.
Hmm.
But yeah, they got attacked, and I think he was unconscious for like 2 or 3 days when they found him. Yeah,
Man. I mean, Bigfoot, it's definitely the dream for me to see one day. I'd love to. I'm here in the UK, so you do get reports and sightings here in the UK, but not as much as in the US. I'd love to get over there, man, and
yeah, shit,
come
yeah.
squatching with you. That
Dude,
would
I hope
be
you can. If you ever can, man, shit, you're invited. You got an open
thank you,
invitation, dude. Yeah,
thank you, man, because that's the dream. That's
yeah.
the goal one day. Have a cabin in the woods where I can do the podcast and look for
Oh yeah, for
Bigfoot.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, so Dogman isn't a big here, but in this one section between Austin and San Antonio, it's called the Hill Country. Beautiful freaking area, and Dogman is seen quite a bit through there. Bigfoot is seen there also, but Dogman's actually kind of probably takes uh, the number one
Really?
sighting in that area. Yeah, and so it's called the Hill Country because it's rocky and it's hilly as hell, and uh, there's always like an argument about, well, how do they move around without people seeing them? Well, I'm gonna tell you something. You're not getting around on that terrain. I've been up in that terrain before. It's hard and difficult to move as a person, as a human being. Any
Yeah.
other creature, I can see them moving around. And plus, there's this extensive cave system that runs from like south of San Antonio. I mean, past Austin. It's huge, and we're still finding caves to this day. There are still people literally finding cave systems on their property,
Hmm.
and these creatures probably know every nook and cranny of these caves, and can move around. And anytime these rivers dry up, which we go through droughts all the time, I mean, if a creature 20 feet high walking through it, you'll never see it because they're so deep. You know, there's a lot of ravines, a lot of creek beds that are dried up, and yeah, you can move around them easily without being seen.
What's your thoughts on the dog man?
I don't know. I don't. Maybe it is a canine, and I've talked to enough people to think that there is a canine, out there. But I also think that maybe some of them aren't canines; that maybe they actually are some kind of primate, because there are primates out there with a snout,
Mm.
and especially the ones that look like werewolves. I mean, could you imagine a giant, baboon? It might look
Mhm.
like a werewolf.
Yeah.
So, and that's just my opinion. I know people don't like to hear that, but I think there's a possibility that not all dogmen are canine.
Hmm.
Possibility that it could be a primate. But I do
Yeah, for
think that
sure.
there's definitely canine type creature out there walking around on two legs. I
Hmm.
talked to a guy Friday. It was a Friday, yeah, and the one he saw was the Anubis type. And you don't hear that one a lot, but you certainly do hear it, that people do see that Anubis type creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he
Yeah,
saw
man.
that. Yeah, so and well, that's the one when he saw that one. That was in Florida, but Yeah, I think there's a mixture of both of these creatures, and I don't think they live side by side in peace and harmony. I don't think they probably like each other too much. I think just like anything else, they're going to be territorial.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at the very
I've
least,
spoke to people here in the UK that have seen, as they describe, the Anubis type creatures.
right?
And it's wild, man.
Yeah, yeah.
These
There you
things are
go.
all over the world, and
Yeah,
have
all over the world.
always been in every culture. They
Hmm.
appear in every culture.
Hmm.
Super interesting, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Brother,
It's
I know we're running out of time. We're
yeah,
getting past that hour mark. I've loved talking to you tonight, man.
yeah.
And I
Man, I
know
was
that
talking to you too.
there's a lot more we can probably talk about. So you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, yeah, dude, you're welcome to come on my show too. Did we ever get a date
Yeah,
from
I
you?
think I'm booked in, man. I think I'm on
Okay,
next week or the week after. I'm on
okay, cool,
soon.
man. Okay,
So I'm
cool,
coming,
man. Yeah,
man. Can
cool.
you
I
tell the
appreciate it.
listeners where they can find you and your show as well?
Well, they can find me just by typing in my name, Joe the Hoyos, on Facebook or any other social media, or just look for Beyond the Woodline. Just type that in on YouTube or Spotify or TikTok, Beyond the Woodline, and um, yeah, I've got over 217 episodes, and I started a new segment which is called Woodline Encounters, which you can still find on Spotify under Beyond the Woodline. And the Woodline Encounters that deals with actual people who experienced or encountered, had sightings with these creatures. The other episodes are all, I talk to researchers and investigators a lot. So
Mhm.
that's primarily what those are. But Woodline Encounters, man, you need to go check them out. I got some really
Awesome,
good
man.
witnesses on that. Yeah.
Awesome, brother. Well, I will be for sure. I'm looking forward to being on it, man. Links will be in the show description so people can
Yep.
find it easily as well. Brother, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank
I'm
you,
looking
man. I
forward to
appreciate it.
talking more.
Yeah, we
Keep
need
up
to
the
figure out how to
great
get you down
work.
here to Texas too, man.
I'm coming, man, for sure.
Yeah, sir. Yeah,
Guys,
yeah.
thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, share it where you can. That's a great way to support us. Check out all our shows. Give us 5 stars if you can. That is another great way that really does help us. It really pushes us up, gets us out there to more people that enjoy these freaky conversations like we've had tonight. Brother, stay safe out there. I look
You
forward to
too, man.
talking more. And yeah, keep it freaky, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you very much, guys.